Story 1. Melinda's Hot Sauce. In the 1980s, a Belizean woman named Marie Sharp began growing habanero peppers and making hot sauce. She named it Melinda's after her husband's farm. The sauce gained immense popularity in Belize, leading her to find a distributor to sell her products in the United States, where it quickly became the best-selling habanero sauce. However, Marie was not business savvy, and the Figueroa brothers trademarked the Melinda's name without her knowledge. They cut her out of the U.S. market and began selling a cheaper imitation under her brand name. Marie fought them in court for 5 years until she could no longer afford the legal fees and ultimately gave up the name in exchange for the Figueroas canceling her sole distributor contract. As a result, she was unable to sell any hot sauce in the United States while still under contract with them. Afterward, she started over and named her sauce after herself. Marie Sharp's habanero hot sauce is now available on U.S. store shelves and is significantly better than Melinda's. Do not support corporate theft. Story 2. Newegg sent me a PC with a faulty graphics card, which I returned. They then sent me a picture of a broken server rack and stated that they couldn't provide a refund because this is what I sent them. I reached out on social media, but they still wouldn't issue a refund. I became so frustrated that I mentioned this felt like fraud and considered contacting a lawyer. My refund arrived an hour later. Story 3. My father was terminally ill with cancer, and he began signing over all his accounts. The manager faxed the forms for my father to sign, and he returned them. Unfortunately, the last page was cut off, and the manager did not mention it. As a result, we were not granted permission to access his account after his passing. We had to hire a lawyer for $15,000 to fight Wells Fargo and retrieve our father's money. I will never do business with them again. Story 4. Wells Fargo has continuously exploited and scammed its customers and has faced repeated regulatory issues. Changing leadership may not be enough, as such a deeply ingrained culture within the company takes a long time to change. Story 5. Adobe reversed their permanent licensing for individuals who had already purchased permanent licenses and attempted to respond subtly when questioned about it. Story 6. Ticketmaster. On 2 separate occasions, something went wrong and they showed a lack of concern. For a Lady Gaga concert, they sold tickets for a non-existent section, and the venue scrambled to put us in foldable chairs right behind a row of portable toilets. We couldn't see anything but smelled everything. Then, for a Beyoncé concert, they sold us $1,800 VIP tickets that were nowhere near the advertised location. They relabeled the row of seats right behind that area as obstructed, which was also true of the VIP section. You could hardly see anything. In both cases, Ticketmaster refused to assist and stated that they reserved the right to change any aspect of the seating arrangement. It's so hard to avoid doing business with them, which is why I didn't initially boycott, but now, never again. I don't care if I never see another live concert. Story 7. Pet boys treated me poorly, leaving me broken down in the median of a busy road in a less than ideal part of town as a scared teenager. I believe they assumed they could take advantage of a college student without actually fixing the car. Years later, with much more disposable income, I still refused to give them my business. Story 8. Verizon. My contract was up for renewal, so I went to the online chat to get new pricing. The representative provided the information and tried to get me to recommit, but I politely thanked him and said I was still shopping around. A few minutes later, I received an email alert that my account settings had changed. He removed paperless billing, autopay, and an employer discount. When I followed up, I learned there was no way that could happen accidentally. I received many apologies, but I would never trust them again. Story 9. Nestle's CEO lobbied to legislate that tap water should only be used for dishes and laundry. He believes that people should not be able to drink the water coming from their taps. Moreover, the company continues to siphon public water supplies to bottle and sell for profit. This company is detrimental, and the owners should reconsider their practices. Story 10. Walmart. The company ranks in the top 5 for employees on government assistance and is at the top for retailers that receive supplemental nutrition assistance program spending. The wealthiest family on earth is using taxpayers to cover their payroll. Story 11. Any food delivery service, such as Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, and Grubhub, pays drivers minimally and has faced controversies regarding tips. They charge customers high fees, take profits from restaurants, lead customers to blame restaurants for driver errors, and promote ghost kitchens, which undermine local restaurant culture. This model negatively impacts customers, drivers, and restaurants, all for the sake of convenience. Story 12. Blue grass quality meats. I worked there, and a manager told me to pick up meat from the floor and put it back on the rack. That floor was cleaned with chemicals strong enough to eat through my boot, and now it was on my food. When I tried to say they couldn't make me do that, I was written up. As far as I know, that person still works there. Story 13. I had them for 10 years without a claim. I was rear-ended by a teenager. It was 100% his fault. He had insurance, but they gave me numerous issues regarding the valuation of my car. I escalated my case to the supervisor of the agent, and this individual was dishonest with me. It got so frustrating that I recorded our conversation. I then uploaded the recording to a video sharing platform and sent it to everyone at the company that I could reach. Only then did I receive a fair assessment for my car. They initially offered me $10,000, but I ended up settling for $19,000. Felt like a scam. A little while later, my friend had an accident while also insured with them. She faced difficulties regarding which repair shop to use, but she was right to insist on taking it to the dealer. That experience was enough for me to switch providers. When I switched, I had already signed up for new insurance, and the agent tried to persuade me to stay by saying that I didn't know how they would treat me during an accident since I hadn't had one with them yet. I replied that I knew how they had treated me, and I did not appreciate it. Story 14. The Salvation Army. I have caught them stealing toys meant for the Toys for Tots program on 3 separate occasions, claiming they were with the Marines and sent to do pickups. This occurs when many of your volunteers are participating only because it is court-ordered community service or they seek work release while in jail. Story 15. Bluebell Ice Cream had a listeria outbreak in their factory in the early 2010s. A report revealed that conditions in that factory were abysmal, with water dripping into ice cream and pests present. Instead of boycotting the company, many Texans decided to continue buying their ice cream and support Bluebell because it is a Texas company. They had no incentive to address their sanitary issues because some individuals prioritize state pride over food safety. I still have no idea if they ever resolve their factory problems. I still won't eat their ice cream. They lost my trust forever. Story 16. HelloFresh. We canceled our subscription and called my wife to persuade her to restart it, but I was met with resistance. I told the representative no one final time, and she replied, "Welcome back." I canceled again immediately and submitted a complaint against her. Story 17. Uline is a massive business supplier that openly laments that workers have rights and actively tries to regain the past era of treating workers poorly. Story 18. I really wish I could say Ticketmaster, but they are a monopoly. Everyone dislikes them, but if you enjoy live music, it is very hard to avoid them. Story 19. My local McDonald's and KFC both display one price on their menu but charge a different amount. A chicken sandwich may be listed as $5.39 but rings up as $7.99, and the staff are rude when you point it out. Story 20. Shake Shack. The COVID-19 pandemic hit my small business hard, and we applied for the Paycheck Protection Program loans as soon as they became available. We were told the funds were depleted. It turned out that Shake Shack, along with a few other companies, exploited loopholes to treat each of their corporate-owned locations as separate businesses and received millions of dollars in loans before actual small businesses could access any funding. I have not set foot in one since. Story 21. As a veteran, I appreciate companies that acknowledge their veteran ownership. It's acceptable to mention it briefly on the website. However, there is no need for excessive patriotic or militaristic imagery and messaging. Using American flags, stars, rifles, or camouflage print extensively, or naming the company variations of Patriot, feels overdone. Story 22. My grandparents took their Jeep Grand Cherokee to a dealership for a recall on the wiring. On their way home, the wiring overheated so badly that the roof of their car started melting. They had to go to the hospital for burns. They approached Jeep about it and Jeep stated, "Our records show we completed the recall service, so this isn't our fault. You can either take the payout from insurance or we will match it as a courtesy." What did they do? They took the insurance money and used it as part of their down payment for another Jeep Grand Cherokee. I will never give Jeep any money in my life. Story 23. American Airlines. Their error caused me to miss a flight, which I had to pay to rebook. Their response was that there was nothing they could do. They almost admitted their fault but wouldn't make it right. Never again, probably. This is likely the case because it seems that whenever I say never, I end up eating my words later on. Story 24. Bank of America took bailout money from the government and then hosted a $2 million Super Bowl party tent. I immediately closed my account with them and will never do business with them again. Story 25. I stayed at the Best Western Disney location. They have bed bugs. The bugs were so bold they walked across the pillows as if they owned the room. I was shocked and called management. The manager didn't seem to care. They did not inform anyone in the adjacent rooms and asked, "What do you want me to do?" I wanted a refund and help to feel clean again. Story 26. Rogers and Bell in Canada have been criticized for their predatory practices and lack of integrity, as their services are generally inferior. Story 27. BP pleaded guilty to felony manslaughter, yet they continue to operate gas stations. Story 28. I needed a vinyl banner made. Instead of choosing a large national or international company, I decided to support local businesses. I obtained a quote and provided all the necessary files to the print shop, specifying my deadline and requesting to see the proof at least 3 days prior. However, I received no response. The proof date came and went, as did the deadline. I visited the shop and spoke with the owner, who had taken my order and claimed he had never heard of it until I showed him the correspondence. Suddenly, he recalled the order and assured me that he would take care of it personally and I would receive a proof within a few hours. Still, nothing happened. I decided to design the banner myself and submitted it through a larger company, receiving my banner within a few days. Meanwhile, the local shop sent me a proof that was objectively poor and had the audacity to double the price due to the rush job. I expressed my frustration and have taken the opportunity to share my negative experience with this business. Story 29. Walmart has harmed small-town businesses and is filled with unsavory individuals. It feels like the seventh circle of shopping hell, as I recall. Story 30. Cracker Barrel hired me for a management position and scheduled my training for the following week, even providing plane tickets. However, they rescinded the offer without giving me a reason. I had already quit my previous job, but thankfully, they allowed me to return because I had left on good terms. I feel fortunate to have avoided that situation, and I haven't stepped foot in a Cracker Barrel since. That was 20 years ago. Story 31. Approximately 20 years ago, I rented a vehicle through Dollar Rent a Car. I had reserved a full-size car, as advertised on the website, something along the lines of Toyota Camry or similar. However, when I arrived at the rental location, I was handed the keys to a Hyundai Elantra, a model that Dollar's own website classified as a compact. When I raised the issue with the staff at the location, I was told that this particular branch used a different classification system than what was listed on the national website. At this location, the Elantra was considered full-size. Despite my concerns, the staff refused to offer an alternative vehicle or adjustment, citing the busy time of year. Left with no real choice, I accepted the car. I subsequently contacted Dollar's corporate office to file a complaint and was issued a $10 coupon for a future rental. This response was inadequate given the nature of the issue. I have never rented from Dollar since, and I have no intention of doing so in the future. While I understand Dollar is now owned by Hertz, this experience left a lasting negative impression, and I continue to avoid both brands even when they are the cheapest. Story 32. Whirlpool. I bought a dishwasher, washer, and dryer in 2022. The dishwasher needed a new motherboard barely within the warranty. The washer needed a new one just outside the warranty, and they were purchased a few months apart. The cost to repair or replace was within $150 of a new unit. Never again. Story 33. Exxon. Their inadequate response to the Exxon Valdez environmental disaster in 1989 made me vow to never give them any business again. Story 34. Nestle uses child labor for their water. Chiquita overthrew a democratically elected government to establish banana plantations, which destabilized Guatemala for decades. Story 35. Walmart negatively impacts small economies. Hobby Lobby intertwines religion with politics. Ticketmaster's handling fees on digital transactions are questionable. Monsanto operates in an unethical manner. Story 36. Capital One would not allow me to dispute a fraudulent charge. Marriott canceled our reservation for our wedding night after confirming a late check-in the day before. We found out when we were standing in the lobby, with me in my wedding dress and my husband in his tuxedo. They still sent me a survey. Story 37. Spirit Airlines. My wife and I flew to Kansas City, Missouri, because our son passed away suddenly. They lost our luggage, and we had to wear the same clothes for 3 days while attending our son's memorial. We received our luggage back when we checked in to fly home, and they had the audacity to try to charge us for our bags. Story 38. Hobby Lobby. The owner's wife claimed to have a vision from God stating that they had to stay open despite the COVID lockdown orders. They also do not allow their employee health insurance to cover birth control, and they were involved in a religious artifact smuggling ring. Story 39. Chipotle. I used to visit frequently, but when I tried to get lunch at a new location, I was told I couldn't order in person and had to use the app. I believe it was just an experiment they were trying at a few stores, but I still refuse to return to any Chipotle because I dislike that idea so much. Story 40. Hobby Lobby. I am not a fan of their religious beliefs influencing their business practices. However, the unusual Bible museum and the questionable methods they use to obtain artifacts for the museum are what prevent me from ever visiting. I strongly dislike Hobby Lobby. Story 41. Chewy. Their technician denied my dying dog's medication because it wasn't time to renew, even after getting my vet's approval. I canceled everything, went to Alavet, and now I'm back in business keeping him pain-free for the remainder of his life. Story 42. The American Red Cross has a long history of unethical conduct, and I have encountered many first-hand accounts of how this organization has acted inappropriately, wronged individuals, mismanaged resources, or overstepped boundaries, resulting in people who needed help not receiving supplies or assistance that could have otherwise been available. In my opinion, the organization needs to be reined in and reorganized, if not outright disbanded. When my father was injured in a hospital in Vietnam awaiting aeromedical evacuation, the Red Cross charged him and other injured soldiers for paper and pencils to write letters. They then collected the pencils to resell once he had finished using them. Meanwhile, back home, my mother had donated money to the American Red Cross, which claimed it would use the funds, among other things, to buy writing supplies for wounded soldiers. The Red Cross also sold sweets to soldiers returning from the front lines, while the Salvation Army and other organizations simply provided soldiers with whatever supplies they had to give. After Hurricane Andrew swept through Florida, a cousin who lived in an area with severe damage noted that the Red Cross came through offering assistance. After the situation was resolved, many people who received help also received demands for repayment for the assistance they had been given. After Hurricane Katrina, the Red Cross collected substantial donations for those affected by this disaster. They later announced that instead of providing more help to more victims, they would set aside millions of dollars for future use. They also mismanaged a lot of perishable supplies, resulting in food going bad while waiting to be distributed, leaving people hungry when they should not have been. I could go on, but I think that's enough to make my point clear. Story 43. Home Depot. I had them do a cabinet installation that was supposed to take less than a week. The subcontractor they sent out was clueless and very slow, damaging cabinet bottoms to fit the plumbing and not bothering to use shims. Home Depot themselves ordered each cabinet incorrectly at least twice and misordered our custom pantry cabinet no less than a dozen times. I believe they incurred over $5,000 in losses on that one piece. The installation dragged on for months, and we eventually had to escalate the issue to corporate. Everything was finally ordered and installed correctly, but what a complete mess. I support Team Blue these days. Story 44. Wendy's. The last 2 times I ordered through the app, I arrived for my order only to find that they were out of one of the items. They refused to issue a refund and insisted on a substitution. I told them to cancel my entire order if they wouldn't provide a partial refund for the item I had already paid for, and they didn't have in stock. I had to contact corporate for a refund, as they kept trying to offer me credit in the app, as if I would ever return. Story 45. They resumed taking money from my bank account 4 years after canceling my DirecTV service. I was able to get back 2 months of charges but had to absorb the rest. I will never do business with AT&T again. DirecTV will be out of service soon, so I won't have to worry about them much longer. Story 46. Ford Motor Company. I bought a minivan from them around the year 2000. It kept stalling, and within 2 months of purchase, I was informed it needed a new head gasket and that it would not be fixed under the warranty. A quick internet search revealed that the make and model I purchased was known to be defective and that people all over the country were experiencing the same issue, but Ford refused to address it as a warranty matter. I sold that vehicle as soon as I could as a trade-in on a different car, not a Ford, and I never bought anything from that company again. Once bitten, twice shy. Story 47. Any company that describes, discusses, or promotes political or social views or biases includes examples such as Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby, NASCAR, and Target. There are more, but I prefer not to focus on them. Story 48. In March 2024, I took my Subaru Crosstrek in to get a new windshield. I waited for an hour, then they informed me they didn't have the gasket available. They said they could make one, but it wouldn't fit properly. I decided to wait for the correct gasket. They told me to come back in a week. When I returned, they said they no longer had the glass and asked me to come back again in a week. On my 3rd visit, I found that the glass they wanted to install was scratched. On the 4th visit, I finally received the correct glass and gasket. However, they informed me that the front cameras wouldn't recalibrate and that they needed to order Subaru glass. I returned a week later for the second glass installation, but they still had no gasket. On my 6th visit, I finally got the right glass and gasket, but the cameras still wouldn't recalibrate. They told me to take the vehicle to the dealer for resolution, promising that they would reimburse me. I made an appointment with the dealer for 2 weeks later. They attempted to recalibrate the cameras for 4 hours, but concluded that the cameras were broken due to the installation. I contacted my adjuster, who spoke with Safelite Corporate. The corporate representative informed the adjuster that they would cover the cost of the new cameras, but a district manager needed to initiate the request. Unfortunately, there was no store or district manager available for my area. It took another 2 weeks before a district manager in New Orleans initiated the request. The dealer was unwilling to work with Safelite due to previous issues, and Safelite insisted on paying the dealer directly for the new cameras instead of reimbursing me. After about 3 weeks of back and forth, the dealer finally agreed to accept payment from Safelite but refused to release my car until they received funds. They provided me with a loaner car free of charge while they completed the repair. I followed up with the district manager and urged him to expedite the payment. Took a couple of days, but he eventually processed it. During all the back and forth, they refunded my $500 deductible. However, about a month after the repair, another district manager from Ohio called to say they had refunded my deductible by mistake. I explained the situation again and stated that I was fine with paying my deductible, but they needed to improve their processes. He assured me not to worry about it and ended the call. Each time I was scheduled to take the vehicle in, I called ahead and was assured that they had everything needed. I was never informed of any issues until after my arrival, and in some cases, I waited a considerable amount of time before being notified. The first recalibration attempt cost them nearly $300, the new cameras cost $1,500, and they covered my $500 deductible. I have also shared my experience, which may have cost them additional business. Story 49. While Costco rejected Mango's recent anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, Target complied and seemed to submit to his demands. I will not shop at Target unless they fire their CEO and reverse their prior agreement with him. Story 50. Burkett Kitchen Equipment contacted me in a panic to fix a 12-foot drink bar for them. They only paid half the invoice after I saved their situation. Story 51. There are better options available, but I refuse to shop at the source. I dislike their business practices. When I enter the store looking for a charging block or something similar, I can't even take 2 steps inside before staff start asking me what I need. If I mention that I'm just browsing, they continue to hover around me since there rarely seems to be anyone else in the store. It feels like they never have what I'm looking for, but then try to pressure me into ordering it for pickup. If I wanted to order it and receive it another day, I would simply get it online and have it sent to my home. Why is it so difficult to find an electronics store in a mall that is actually helpful? Story 52. My car wouldn't start when I was leaving work. I called and waited 45 minutes for a tow. When the driver arrived, he sat in his truck and typed on his phone for a few minutes. His engine was so loud that I had to yell to get his attention. I pointed to my car, and he returned to his phone. 5 minutes later, I yelled again to ask if he could come out of the truck so we could talk without yelling over the engine. He glared at me and held up a finger to wait, so I did. He typed on his phone for another 10 minutes. Meanwhile, it was 40 degrees outside, and I was wearing a tank top and a light jacket since I had taken off my work clothes and was planning to turn on the heat as soon as I got in. I started shivering from the cold, and this guy showed no sign of doing anything else. I yelled again to ask if I could wait inside because it was cold. He shrugged, so I went back inside to warm up. Then he just drove off. Rightly upset, I called the service provider and explained what happened. Their response was, "That's not what the driver said happened." It took 3 people and 30 minutes for them to finally arrange for another company to tow my car, followed by another 45-minute wait. The service provider can really be frustrating. They also told me that they would tow my car, but I had to find someone else to give me a ride because they do not transport anyone with a car seat. I understand the liability risk, but are they really going to leave someone and their child in a blizzard because of a car seat? Story 53. Hobby Lobby. I was not a fan because of their attempt to avoid paying for employees' healthcare on religious grounds. After seeing their connection with the organization the Duggars worked with, it will be a cold day in hell before they get a dime from me. When you directly support the abuse of women and children under the guise of faith, you should go out of business. Story 54. Early in the days of online payments, I was informed that a student loan payment I made on the due date was considered late. They used this to deny the interest rate decrease I was promised after 36 on-time payments. I opened a retirement account with Citi and was pushed into a high-fee mutual fund that lost money. When I decided to close the account, I was charged an account closure fee that amounted to the entire cash balance in my account. I had a credit card through Citi with a low fixed interest rate. I received a letter discussing my variable rate and higher interest rates. So, I called to find out what was going on and was assured that my fixed interest rate would not be affected. It turns out they unilaterally changed my card to a variable interest rate and increased the interest rate by 15%. No late payments, no reason given. Citi has let me down at every turn. Never again. Story 55. Just going to leave this here if you want some new businesses to never visit again. Story 56. I contacted Geico to inform them that I was moving to a different state. They told me they do not provide auto insurance there, but referred me to another company. 3 weeks later, after completing the move, I called the other company, only to discover that Geico had canceled my auto insurance 3 weeks earlier when I spoke to them. I drove around for 3 weeks with no coverage. I am very frustrated with Geico. Story 57. Hobby Lobby does not believe they should pay for their employees' birth control with their health insurance. They went all the way to the Supreme Court and won. Story 58. Jimmy John's owner is a big game hunter who poses gleefully with the animals he kills, including elephants, rhinos, and leopards. I don't care if some of these hunts are allegedly legal. I cannot support that kind of violence. Story 59. A hot dog stand in a nearby town had a Confederate flag hanging inside. I went in to try the place, saw that, turned around, and left. They went out of business less than a year later. I have no idea if the two things were related, but I like to think they were. Story 60. I have not spoken to a single Black American who has shopped at Target since the recent diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives were implemented. They show no signs of returning. I find Target's decision puzzling, especially considering the time and effort invested in attracting Black customers. They were making progress, but then it all fell apart. Story 61. I ordered a wiper blade and received the wrong part. I contacted customer support immediately and received a response with supporting evidence. However, I did not hear back for weeks, as I was on a 2-week backpacking trip. When I returned and reached out again, I was informed that I was now outside the return window, and they cited a policy that was not available on their website. Story 62. Allstate doubled the premium on my car insurance, despite the fact that I had never filed a claim as a customer for nearly 20 years. Their reasoning was that I was due to have an accident, based on percentages and probabilities. Story 63. Walmart, Nestle, Hobby Lobby, Chick-fil-A, Shine, Temu, and now Target are the brands I am considering. I am making a strong effort to reduce my reliance on Amazon as well. Story 64. Wizards of the Coast may seem like a first-world problem, but if you look up the Open Gaming license scandal, you'll see that they attempted to restrict over 20 years of third-party creators from making money without sharing it with them. It would have essentially crashed the third-party market for Dungeons and Dragons. Then they denied it. They later released an apology stating that everyone won. I do not support companies that actively try to undermine the people who support them. Story 65. Chick-fil-A offers mediocre food at best. When I moved to the South, everyone kept telling me to try it as if it were some heavenly delicacy. I can make better waffle fries in my air fryer at home. Additionally, they are a morally questionable company, and I will never spend any of my money there. Hobby Lobby could be included in that list for the same reason. Story 66. HelloFresh was a service I tried, but I didn't realize it was a subscription that automatically renewed. I would be out of town when the next box of ingredients was supposed to be delivered. I called and confirmed they hadn't sent it out yet, but they wouldn't cancel the order even without a refund. I didn't want the food to go to waste, but it was delivered and rotted outside my door for a week. Story 67. I needed a new refrigerator, but the local store didn't have the right size for my kitchen. The salesman told me I wouldn't want to order one, and as we were leaving, he said, "You'll be back." I replied, "No, I won't." I ended up getting a refrigerator delivered from H.H. Gregg 2 or 3 days later, and now I have it in my man cave. I think it's 20 to 25 years old. Story 68. I used to work at KFC and Taco Bell, and I saw enough to the point that I wouldn't even recommend my worst enemy eat there. Story 69. Meineke damaged the engine on my car when I took it in for a simple oil leak. They had my car for almost 3 months. The loaner vehicle they provided was dirty, not properly maintained, and not registered. I took my car back after 1 week because they wanted to check on it, and I had a list of complaints. They told me it was all my responsibility now. My alternator failed, and now the air conditioning is not working. There is a smell of gas and antifreeze. I left negative reviews and contacted the Better Business Bureau. I will never return there. Story 70. I lived in Western Florida during the oil spill and was appalled at how they handled everything. I have purchased gas from BP about 10 times since, but only because I was almost empty and BP was the only option available. I am not pleased with BP. Story 71. Southwest Airlines and Delta Airlines have fallen from grace rapidly. I have had better experiences with United, Allegiant, and Spirit recently. Walmart and Kroger are the only major retailers in my area. They are known for treating their employees poorly. I often shop at Dollar General, which also has low employee morale but is convenient, or at Aldi as much as possible. Story 72. My husband is Korean American. When we were car shopping, I was horrified to learn why we as a family do not buy Mitsubishi. Story 73. Aspen Dental charged me for services I declined, and it took multiple phone calls and visits to the office to have the charges removed. Spectrum failed to show up for a scheduled appointment for which I took time off work and still charged me. Story 74. HelloFresh. For a trivial reason. One time, I tried to give my roommate a referral box, and they accused me of trying to deceive in order to manipulate the system, even though we didn't share groceries in our apartment. I explained that to them, but they insisted and continued to accuse me of lying, so I told them I would never do business with them again. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.